Cool. All right. Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Hey Zakia, hey Charlize. Wave on back for me. Hey Kendra. Thank you for joining me. Happy Wednesday. We're here for another Wednesday session. I'm so excited about this one. Hey Melinda, thank you for joining us. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about credit versus debit today. Now, as you guys are jumping in, I'm going to go ahead and just introduce myself. My name is Jerry Tolliver. I am the owner of Fly Credit Solutions, and what we do at Fly Credit Solutions is we teach you about your credit. We teach you about how to raise your credit scores. We teach you about budgeting. We teach you about responsible money management, because I don't know about you, but I wasn't really taught a lot about money. A lot of what I learned was a lot the hard way, right? And I don't want you guys to go through what I had to go through. I don't want you guys to learn the hard way. I want you all to learn it the right way. I want you all to kind of skip the hard step with your money habits. And today we're going to give you the difference between credit and debit. Now, every day when we go somewhere, to a store, to anywhere to purchase anything, we're shopping online, a lot of the times we're asked if we're going to use a credit card or a debit card, right? And a lot of people are like, well, you know what, I'm just going to use my debit card versus a credit card. Or a lot of people don't like using credit cards at all. So I want to kind of help you guys understand the difference between your credit card and your debit card. Hi, Deborah. Hey, guys. Thank you for joining me. Hi. Thank you for joining me. Happy Wednesday. So today's live session is about credit versus debit, okay? So we're going to talk about the main differences between the two, and then we're going to start by categorizing it, right? Because people tell me all day, every day, Jerry, cash is king. And although cash may be king, it's not king if you don't have much of it. Right? If you don't have any cash, then you don't have a lot of power. So I'm going to help you with understanding how you can leverage your credit, how you can use your credit to make more cash, right? So that you can use that for future investments, so that you can use for your family, your future, anything that you want to do, okay? I want you to keep a lot of your cash, and I want you to start leveraging your credit, because if anybody asks me, credit is the way to go, especially if you're in business. So let's actually go ahead and get into it. Now, what you all need to know is there's the difference between a credit card and a debit card. Now, does anybody know the difference between a credit card and a debit card? I'll let you all go ahead and just drop it below. But what do you personally prefer to use? Do you prefer to use a debit card, or do you prefer to use a credit card? And if you use a debit card, why do you prefer to use it? And if you use a credit card, why do you, or why don't you? There are so many people that don't have not one credit card, not one. And I always tell people all the time, you need at least 1 to 2 credit cards. Why is that? We're gonna kind of go into why you need a credit card, but you need one. So what would you prefer to use? Would you prefer to use debit, or would you prefer to use credit? Now, I personally like to use credit. The reason why I like to use credit is because credit gives me a little more protection, right? With debit cards, your debit card is attached to your personal bank account. It's attached to your checking account. So when you swipe that debit card, that money comes straight out of your bank account. Right? Which is the reason why some people, whenever they request a refund, it takes forever to get a refund back, right? Like 2-3 days just to get a refund back on any of the purchases that you make. But it's not the same thing when you purchase it with a credit card. Why is that? Well, with a debit card, because it's attached to your personal banking information, if you put a dispute in, or if you ask the retailer to refund you your money back, it's going to take a couple of days, because their merchant has to call your bank and they have to communicate with each other in order to give you a refund. But if you use a credit card is like taking out a small short-term loan. That's the best way to describe it. A credit card is like taking out a short-term loan, right? So if you're purchasing gas, or if you're paying for your light bill or your gas bill or your water bill or your cell phone bill or anything, if you're paying for anything with your credit card, not only do you have a little bit of time to pay on it, and maybe you may pay a little interest, but credit gives you more flexibility to do what you need to do. Right? So it's like a short-term loan. So you have a little time to pay it back, especially if you don't want to pay it back with interest. If you do pay it back with interest, yeah, it may take you a little longer, but credit gives you a little more flexibility. Now, this is great when it comes to business, because what do you need when you're an entrepreneur? A lot of flexibility. You don't know what type of money you're going to make this month, next month, or the month after that. It's a lot of things that come into play. You don't know if an emergency is going to come up. You never really know. So credit really comes into play so you can leverage that to make more cash. Now let's talk about the basic things that most people look into when they're looking for to use a debit or a credit card. Now the first thing we want to talk about is convenience. How convenient is it to use your credit or debit card? Now, it's all convenient because they're little plastic cards, right? It doesn't take up a lot of room in your wallet like cash does. You have a wad of cash in your wallet, and it's going to take, you're bending it, and it's too much, right? You got cards. Most millennials these days use cards. Whether it's a credit card or a debit card, most millennials use cards. Not a lot of people like to use cash. Why is that? Because you may lose it. You may lose your cash. I've lost plenty of cash in my day. So that's one of the main reasons why I don't carry it, because I lose it or I don't keep track of it well. So I do much better with a card because you can see your transactions every time you swipe. You can see where you made the transaction. You can see what time you made the transaction. Rather than with cash, sometimes you spend it and then you look up and you wonder, where did my cash go? But with credit or debit cards, once you swipe it, you'll know, oh yeah, I spent it at Target when I wasn't supposed to. But you get the point, right? So it's the convenience factor. Now, when you're looking at convenience, though, it's not even just about it being a card. Convenience as in, let's say you go traveling. I went out to Cabo, about a week or so ago, and it was much more convenient for me to have cash than it was for me to have a card. Because I tried to swipe a credit card out there, and my bank froze my account because it's overseas or it's out of the country. It's an unfamiliar transaction. So there are a lot of like security measures that your credit card won't really work with you, right? So with your credit card, the convenience factor, I guess I'd have to give that one to debit. Debit is more convenient. So here we got the pros and the cons for each one. This is the pros and cons for credit. This is the pros and cons for your debit. I'm gonna have you guys help me with filling this in, but let's give the convenience factor to the debit card, because although you can use it like a credit card, you won't pay interest on it, so that's a good thing, right? What else with a debit card? You may pay a little fees at an ATM, but there's a lot less fees with your debit card, and it's a little more convenient, and you can use it anywhere. It's accepted in a lot of different places, okay? So we'll give the convenience factor to the debit card. So let's talk about acceptability. Credit cards, debit cards, right? Same exact thing. But the difference between them is the processing fees. If anybody's in business, if you have a merchant account, one of the most things that merchants do is they may accept only certain type of cards, right? So they may only accept the MasterCard or Visa. Those are the two major cards, whether it's credit or debit, that most retailers that they take. Why is that? Why don't they take Discover? Why don't they take Amex? The reason why they don't take Discover or American Express most times is because the processing fees are relatively high compared to Visa or MasterCard. So sometimes if you go into a store to purchase something, they may not accept credit cards because of the processing fees. So you may only be able to use cash because of that. Some retailers don't take credit cards. Why? Because of chargebacks or because of the simple fact that the fees are higher. So although debit and credit cards can be used the same, a lot of retailers don't accept it because of high processing fees. So I'm going to give the acceptability factor to the debit card. And these are just the main factors that most people look into when they're looking for a credit or debit card. Now let's talk about leverage. Leverage as in you can use other people's money. Now cash doesn't give you that type of leverage because once you spend it, it's gone, right? Once you get it, you work for it. Once you spend it, you're never using it again. So you could either use your cash to make some investments and then try to get that money back later, or you can use your credit card. Now, I love credit cards. Anybody that knows me knows I love credit cards. And the reason why that is because of flexibility that you get. I read a story once about Spike Lee. Spike Lee started and built his empire using credit cards, right? Why? Because when you use cash, once you use it, it's gone. If you make it an investment and it goes south, you're never getting that cash back. If you use credit, you have a little bit of leverage. You could either pay the money back, or if you don't have the money at all, you can file bankruptcy and not worry about it again. So with credit, you can leverage other people's money to make a lot more money. And most people do that. Most people use their credit to make investments. Most people use their credit to build a company. That's what credit was designed to do anyway. That's the reason why credit was designed. It was designed to help companies get their materials, to help them with paying employees, to help them grow their companies, to help them grow their ideas. Why? Because it helped them make more money. It'll make more money for the bank. But what happened was that people start consuming on credit. And when you start consuming on credit, then you start getting into a lot of unnecessary debt that's really, really difficult to get out of. So the leverage factor, I'd have to give it to credit, because you don't have any leverage with cash. And if you have a lot of it, you do. If you have a lot of cash, then you do have some leverage, because if you're going to go buy a property, if you got cash on hand, you could buy that a lot faster than somebody that does not have cash. You can make a lot of faster decisions when you have cash on hand. But if you don't have it, then you don't really have a lot of leverage. With credit, you have a lot of leverage. With lines of credit, you can use it like a checking account, right? So I'm going to give the leverage factor to the credit. So leverage. I know my handwriting's not that great. Emergency factor. Now, we have to give emergency factor to credit. Why? Because most people, I've read an article lately that says most millennials don't even have a savings account. They don't have any cash in savings. So if they don't have any cash in savings, then what's going to happen if emergency pops up? They have to either take out a loan or they have to use a credit card. If you don't have a credit card, you can't even book a hotel. Well, you can book a hotel. You can't book a car. You can't rent a car without a debit card, without a credit card. Why? Because your credit cards have all these perks and stuff that's built into it. So it has rental insurance built into your credit card. It's funny because every time I go rent a car somewhere and I use my credit card, they always ask me, do I want the insurance? And I always tell them no. And they always ask me again, well, are you sure you don't want the insurance? And I always tell them no, because it's built into my credit card. All of that is built into your credit card, so you don't need to have extra insurance. Although they'll try to guilt you into it, because he just sat there and looked at me for like a solid 2 minutes and asked me, are you sure? This is our investment, because if anything happens to it, then we're not going to be able to get, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. It's built into my credit card. Nothing's going to happen to your car, but if it does, my credit card company will take care of it. I mean, you need a credit card to go to a timeshare presentation, apparently, and who wants to go to a timeshare presentation? But you need a credit card to do all of that. You need a credit card to rent a car. You need a credit card to go to a timeshare. You need a credit card to do a lot of different things, okay? If anything were to happen to your health, if anything were to happen to your car, if anything were to happen, just anything, any type of emergency, you'll never know what happens. If you don't have any cash in the bank, then you need some type of credit to help you with that, okay? So I'm going to have to give the emergency factor to credit. So we'll write emergency here. Let's talk about perks. What perks are there to cash? Can anybody list any perks to cash? Do you get any cash back for spending cash? Do you get any points or rewards for spending cash? Cash. We're going to have to give the perks to credit. Why? I've earned over $1,000 on my credit cards just for using them. Just for using them for lights or gas or my things that I'm already paying for. Right? If you haven't already taken a look at my previous video about how to pay off your mortgage in less than 10 years, you need to take a look at that, because I use a lot of my perks to help me with paying off my mortgage faster using my credit cards. So if you have not taken a look at that video, go back about a week or so and take a look at that video, because it's going to show you how you can utilize your credit cards or a line of credit to pay off your mortgage loan faster. Okay, it works with any type of loan, honestly. A car loan, any type of loan, you can pay off debt a lot faster by using that strategy. But with perks, you get cash back. You get flights. Oh, that's how I paid for the flight for Cabo. I used the points that I got from my credit cards, right? So that you can use it for points. You can use it for cash back. You can use it for, oh my goodness, hotel stays. You can use it for a lot of different things, okay? So the perks and rewards are the major factor with your credit cards. The thing is, you just don't want to carry balances on your credit cards, because when you do, then you start paying interest. And what is credit really? Credit is like imaginary money that you pay interest on. You don't want to pay interest on imaginary money. So the perks are going to have to go to credit. All right, let's talk about protection. Now this is about identity protection and purchase protection. Now, identity protection is one of the key things when you're using your cards, right? When you're using your cards, there are a lot of scammers out here. I've been scammed plenty of times where people get a hold of your card information, they charge it like crazy, and you hope and pray that you get the money back. I had a situation where somebody stole my debit card information, and they used it to purchase all this stuff on eBay, like $700 just worth of stuff on eBay. I called eBay and PayPal back to try to get my money back for these unauthorized charges. I never got any, but no, I got like 10-20% of it back. And that's because I used a debit card. I was trying to fight my bank and PayPal, and it was just too much. Because, like I said, when you use a debit card, that money comes straight out your bank account. When you use a credit card, it comes out of the bank's bank account, right? So the bank is the middleman, and you basically just use the bank's money to pay for what you purchased online. So in other words, if you ever have unauthorized charges on your credit cards, it's easier to dispute those off of your account. Why? Because the bank is like, look, if you didn't make that purchase, then we don't want to pay for it either. So they're going to credit you your money right back immediately while they do their investigation. With debit cards, they don't give you your money back in most cases until after they're finished with the investigation. With credit, they'll give you your money back and then they do the investigation. And in most cases, I mean, when you've got the big banks on your side and they're fighting, in most cases, you're going to get your money back and you're going to keep the money back, okay? So with credit cards, you get a lot more protection. And this is for not only fraud or identity theft, but for purchase protection also. When you purchase something with your credit card, you get a lot more purchase protection. So if anything were to go wrong with your purchase in a certain time frame, you can take it back or you can get a refund because you have that purchase protection with your credit cards. You don't get that with your debit cards. That's just something that you don't get. Okay, so we're going to give the protection to credit. All right, now what we're also going to do is we're going to talk about some other pros and cons, because these aren't the only things. These aren't the only pros or cons. So let's talk about credit cards. What are some cons to credit cards? One of the cons is paying interest, right? So let's talk about interest. Interest can range from 10, 20, 25, 30% on your credit cards. And once you start carrying high balances on your credit card, it's going to be really, really difficult to pay that off, because the interest starts kicking in and people have a really difficult time with keeping up with that. Now, what about overspending? Overspending. So let's talk about that. With debit, it's a little difficult to overspend, because everything that you spend, it has to be available in your bank account. If it's not in your bank account, then you just can't spend it. Sometimes the banks will let you overdraw, but then you'll pay, some overdraft fees and whatnot. But that's something that you don't really happen with credit. Like once you reach the limit, you can't spend anything else. But that's the problem. Some people have high limits and then they just charge it like crazy, and then they're like, oh my God, I got to pay it back now. So it takes them a while because they overspend, okay? And then that interest starts kicking in, and then it really starts creeping up on them. It makes it really difficult to pay off. Unnecessary debt. And let's talk about, it'll hurt your credit if you pay it late. It does help your credit, so you can build credit, but it can also hurt your credit. Pros and cons of credit cards, okay? So you get purchase protection, you get perks, you get more money for emergencies, and you can leverage it better to pay off even more debt or make some investments, okay? What else? You get flexibility with your credit cards. I don't know if you guys can see this, but you get flexibility with your credit cards. What about debit? What do we got down here? Can you guys help me out? Help me out. What do you get with your debit cards? What do you get with your debit cards? With debit, what are the pros with debit? No overspending. Let's see. No interest. So no interest. What are some cons? Cons to debit cards. Cons to debit cards. ATM fees, maybe. Who likes taking out money who likes spending money to take out their own money? Nobody likes doing that. So let's talk about ATM fees. When you take money out the account, when you take money out of your account from another bank and they charge you an ATM fee just for taking out your own money. That's frustrating, I know. But that's something a lot of people can't really get around that, right? Sometimes. My bank actually reimburses me for my fees. So that's a great thing. Let's talk about credit. So another pro, you can liquidate your credit cards through cash advances, right? So you can liquidate your credit cards and get cash off of your credit cards. So that's a good thing that you can definitely do. Sherry, fees, that's right, fees. I'm just going to put fees here, period. Overdraft fees, ATM fees, just fees, just all these fees. So as you can see, between credit and debit, which would you choose? Which would you prefer? Would you like to leverage? Would you like to have more money for emergencies? Would you like to have cash back rewards and take more trips? Would you like to have more protection for your identity and any purchases that you make? Right? Would you like more flexibility? Would you like that? If so, you need to choose a credit card. This is the only reason why I choose a credit card over debit. You choose a credit card because you want more protection. If anything were to happen to any of your information, which happens often, right? Every time you look up, somebody's company is getting a data breach or something. And when they get a data breach, then your information, your cash, your money, your accounts are at risk. And you don't experience that with your credit cards. So did anybody have any questions about anything that we have reviewed today? Hi, Dioso. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Sherry. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions about what we have reviewed? So between credit and debit, between all of this, right, what would you prefer to choose? Most people would say, well, you know what? Credit is the devil. Credit is the devil. No, credit is not the devil. It's not the devil. What's the devil is overspending. What's the devil is not paying your bills on time. That's what the devil is. If you want, you can pay your bills on time, build solid credit history, and have all the credit and cash and whatever you want that you can leverage, okay? As long as you use it the right way. As long as you use it responsibly, credit is not the devil. Use your credit cards, okay? Teach your children about how to utilize credit cards correctly. Because a lot of us got into college, a lot of us got older, and we didn't know anything about credit. And then what happened? Then we had to revisit the subject as we got older to figure out how to fix it. So credit is your best friend if you know how to utilize it properly, okay, y'all? Credit is the key. Credit is the key. You know, like I said earlier, most people say cash is king. Cash is only king if you got a lot of it. If you don't have a lot of cash, leverage your credit until you do, okay? So I really hope that you all got a lot of great information out of this video. Do you have any credit cards that you would recommend? Kind of depends on what your credit is, okay? It depends. If you have poor credit, then you want to just get like some secured cards or try the shopping cart trick, which is on our blog. You can visit it at flycredit.com and you can check out what the shopping cart trick is. So you can get approved for a credit card without a credit check. All right, if you have average credit, you can go with Capital One. Chase has a couple of cards for average credit. But if you have excellent credit, you really won't have a problem with getting too much of anything. Excellent credit is like 720 or above. 720, you can get approved for anything that your little heart desires with very little interest, okay? So I hope you all love the information today. And if you have any questions, concerns at all for us, feel free to reach us directly at contact@flycredit.com, or you can schedule a free consultation at flycredit.com/consultation, and we'll be more than happy to answer any of your credit related questions. It's time for you to take your finance to another level. It's time for you to take your credit to another level. It's time for you to stop it. We got to stop the struggle, stop passing down the struggle, give our future generations, our communities, something they can grow with, okay? So I really love the fact that you all have been joining me on these Wednesdays, every Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Next week, we will talk more about your credit on a business level, okay? But other than that, happy Wednesday, y'all, and I'll see you next time. Bye.